Okay, so I didn't really go to London Film Festival. Each year the BFI partners with a lot of small cinemas all around the UK to allow other people to see some of the features playing at the festival and let audiences all around the UK get access to films that they would have to typically wait quite a while for. So I took advantage of this and saw a bunch of films early that I probably wouldn't have been able to see for quite a bit of time. And I just want to sit down today and talk about how I felt about a lot of them. Also, these are just ranked in the order that I saw them in, not from worst to best or however you want to interpret that. This is just the order that I saw each movie in. The Smashing Machine comes from one half of the Safdie brothers and is the story about Mark Kerr, the underrated UFC champion, as we navigate through his story and basically the highs and lows of being one of the most early UFC fighters. Now, I'm sure everyone in the film sphere is aware of this movie, specifically for the casting of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Mark Kerr, which took a lot of people back and maybe questioned what the hell Benny Safdie was doing, myself included. I've made it very clear that I'm not a Rock fan on this channel. I think this was his sort of excuse to be like, look, I can actually act as a real person and not just play myself in a bunch of films. And for the most part, he actually does a pretty fantastic job. Fantastic enough to get nominated for an Oscar is a different story. Although I do think he's good and is probably the highlight of this whole film, I would say that he doesn't really do anything specifically out there that made me go, wow, this is really career defining for him. Well, it is career defining, but when you have a career like his, it's not hard to do one good thing and then have everything else in your career overshadowed by that one thing. It's almost like praising the child in the classroom that's always bad, but one day he actually just has a really good day and doesn't do anything wrong, and it's like, yeah, gold star to this kid. No, you can't just praise that behavior once in a blue moon. You have to build up a whole sort of slot of this stuff. And for me, that is something I would like to see Dwayne do, is actually do more of these roles. Remind us why he got into acting in the first place. I mean, when was the last time he did something that meaningful? The Tooth Fairy? Emily Blunt is also pretty great in this. However, my biggest issues typically lie within the actual story of the film and the way that it's portrayed. This is a direct remake of the documentary that came out all those years ago, and as someone that's seen that documentary, I kind of left thinking, well, what was the point in any of this? Especially when that documentary is 30 minutes shorter than the film. I kind of praise that a bit because it doesn't go into any of this melodrama stuff that no one is really there for. I understand you're probably going to be a bit disappointed going into this, thinking it's a complete UFC movie when really all of the fighting is in the backbone of the film and all the stuff front and center between Mark and Don's relationship and how they're kind of just not great for one another. Honestly, this is a strange direction for Benny Safdie, and as much as I didn't think it was the worst thing in the world, I did leave kind of thinking, man, I wish I was watching Marty Supreme instead. Urchin is the directorial debut of actor Harris Dickinson, and it stars Frank Dillon as Mike, a homeless individual who is kind of trying to get his life back together. If I'm being honest with you, this might be my favourite film that I saw over the past week. Harris Dickinson has proved very much that he is a talented individual, and I don't know whether to love the work that he does or just be completely envious and jealous towards how great he seems to be at everything. The way that this character's played is so raw, and it isn't really one of those films that makes the audience sit there and try and manipulate them into being like, yeah, he makes some wrong choices, but don't you feel bad for him? You kind of effortlessly have this empathy towards Mike as a character. At no point does the film feel like it's trying to force those thoughts onto you. You just by default get it. And this is heavily done by Frank Dillon's performance, despite all of the unlikable things that he does. I'd love to see more from this duo. I think that the score is stunning. I think the film looks beautiful. I think the performances are honestly the highlight. There's one specific scene in a shop which honestly moved me to tears just with how realistic and natural this performance felt. I would recommend this one big. I think it's just getting out in America tomorrow. So if you're out there in the States or even if you're in the UK, check this one out for sure because it is absolutely worth it. Wake Up Dead Man is the third film in the Knives Out series, and honestly one of the ones I was most excited to see. It's crazy the complete 180 that Rian Johnson's career kind of took. After The Last Jedi, it seemed that a large majority of people hated him, but when he released Knives Out, I don't think anyone thought that it was going to be this phenomenon that we would be begging constantly for more films. And although Glass Onion as enjoyable as it was, has many flaws that the first film just clearly doesn't have at all. Wake Up Dead Man truly felt to me like a return to form. Whereas that first one felt more like a drama and the second one leaned much more into the comedy elements, Wake Up Dead Man is just a complete gothic murder mystery story that works so incredibly well and is elevated a lot by the performances and by the strange twists and turns that the story takes as well. The highlight for me is, of course, none other than Mr. Josh O'Connor, who is having a crazy year. Just before I started recording this, they announced like another film he's doing. He just works like crazy, and I'm glad he does because I love seeing him in anything. Daniel Craig is obviously great here too, but Josh O'Connor is just the standout by miles. He dominates every scene he's in, and honestly is kind of the lead. Daniel Craig doesn't even show up in this till about 40 minutes in. And although I am praising this a lot, I do have some issues with the film. With Wake Up Dead Man, it feels like the supporting cast has put a lot more into the background of the film, rather than being completely intertwined with it like the first two movies. For fans of Kaylee Spenny and Andrew Scott, you might leave a little bit disappointed with their lack of screen time or any real influence in the story at all. My biggest issue with this film is the murder mystery aspect of it. My favourite thing about these films and any murder mystery, and I feel I'm not alone in this, is actually trying to work out the murder yourself. Just slowly watching as the plot entwines and paying close attention to the small details in the frames to see if you can understand what's going on and see if you can actually work it out before the film tells you. Anyone that works out what the fuck happened in this before it happened had to have either read what happened beforehand or is secretly Rian Johnson. I love how deep that the story goes and the twists and turns it takes, but there is no way in hell anyone is working any of this out. And it varies on the line of, oh, Rian Johnson is so incredibly smart at making these, and the fuck is going on? I do recommend this one a lot though. I think these films are great for holiday releases and families watching them together just before Christmas, but I do also think the way that these are meant to be seen is in a crowded cinema, which thankfully I've had the privilege of seeing all three of them like that. Sharing that moment with a room full of strangers that you're probably never going to see again is kind of very special, and I'm very glad that the deal with Netflix is over and hopefully the ones that come next will be going into cinemas. Or maybe they won't make another one. It Was Just an Accident is the new film from Jafar Panahi, and honestly I learned from my mistakes last year. I decided to just go with what I wanted to see rather than the stuff that I'd never heard of before, and that led to me missing I'm Still Here. I'm glad I didn't make that mistake with this film. After a lot of buzz from Cannes Film Festival, It Was Just an Accident was one that I kind of knew I had to check out, and if I got the opportunity to see it early, I was going to be there in a heartbeat. Thankfully I was. I honestly don't want to say all that much about this film because I think people might get a little bit more out of it going in completely blind. It has some of the greatest performances of the year. It has one of the most sinister endings I've ever seen. Honestly, the way that the story kind of just flows in this really sort of formulaic setting but still finds a way to be really unique and a breath of fresh air is really well done. And honestly, I'm going to check out a lot more of Jafar's films after this, and also just have a look more into Iranian film. This was very special and really put into perspective how much movies I'm just not checking out. So go and see this one whenever it releases near you. Begonia is the new film from Yorgos Lanthimos and a remake of the South Korean film Save the Green Planet from director Jang Joon-hwan. Yorgos is probably my favourite filmmaker working right now. Poor Things is maybe my favourite film of the 2020s, and I think Kinds of Kindness, The Lobster, The Favourite, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, Dogtooth, they're all very unique and special films in their own way. However, when I learned that he was tackling a remake, I was a little bit scared, because this guy thrives on originality, and although he does adapt some books, he finds a way to make them his own. That being said, Begonia is nothing shy of, maybe a masterpiece, I don't know. I had a fantastic time with this, and honestly, I probably will never doubt Yorgos Lanthimos again, even if he's potentially adapting a book that I don't like all that much. It doesn't shy too far from what the original was trying to say and do, so I would say if you want to go into this with a fresh mindset, maybe don't check out the original first. But then also, if you're like a die-hard film fan, then yeah, go and watch it because it's a great time. Or just make sure you watch it afterwards. This is elevated by a lot of things that Yorgos' films typically are, from the performances, which Emma Stone, we've learned, is a perfect pairing for him. She just never disappoints and is maybe one of the best actresses working to date. Jesse Plemons also gives possibly my favourite performance he's ever given, playing this mentally ill person who kidnaps his CEO thinking that she's an alien. The highlights of this film are specifically the scenes between these two actors, just delivering these expansive monologues back and forth, and reminding us why they are actors that we love and respect so much. Not only that, but it also enhances their characters so much. It has one of my favourite scores of the year from Jerskin Vendricks, who also did Poor Things and Kinds of Kindness. Even though the score in Kinds of Kindness is kind of laid back and much more in the background, and Poor Things is very abrasive, I think that the score in this is a perfect combination of the two, where it knows when to be quiet at the points that it should be, but when things get really out of control, it becomes so abrasive and completely dominates the scene that you kind of walk away with goosebumps. Not only that, but obviously the film looks incredible as well. There was parts of VistaVision that were implemented whilst making this, and that's probably one of the due reasons why it looks so fantastic at certain points. I really do recommend this, as I do all Yorgos films. It probably isn't as good as Poor Things for me, but it's definitely up there as one of my favourites of the year. Hamnet is the new film from Chloe Zhao starring Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal. It follows Agnes and William Shakespeare as they deal with the loss of a family member and how that grief kind of controls each one of them and how they find ways out of it. This is a beautifully made film and also a film that I don't think will be everyone's sort of thing. It is much more slower and laid back than some of Zhao's other films. As much as I don't think this is going to be everyone's cup of tea, I do think that this is going to be a lot of people's favourite films for the year, and I do think it actually has a good chance at Best Picture, which I wouldn't particularly agree with, but hey, you know, maybe. Jessie Buckley has definitely solidified herself as 2026's Best Actress winner. There's no fucking way in hell she loses this. She is just absolutely fantastic in every single scene, whether she's doing a little bit of subtlety in her performance or when she's going full all out, loud, dominating the scene. Mescal also reminds us why he is one of the most important actors of his generation right now, with him constantly bringing it back with all of these really touching and moving performances. We don't talk about Gladiator 2, but stuff like Aftersun and now this is just a constant reminder of how great he can be. Hamnet really is a special film, and although it didn't quite reach at my heartstrings, like many other films have done so this year, kind of made me feel a little bit like, oh, maybe I didn't connect so much to this, but I am looking forward to seeing it again, and I'm very happy that I got the opportunity to see it early, considering it's not out in the UK for quite a fucking while. Finally, the last film that I saw was Guillermo del Toro's remake of Frankenstein. Now, I'm going to be completely honest about this. I was not looking forward to seeing this movie whatsoever before going into it. Obviously, the reviews have kind of been a little bit mixed, and myself and my friend Kieran went in kind of like, what are we doing here? This is 2.5 hours long. I was kind of surprised of how much I liked it, but I also was met with the disappointment that I kind of expected from it too. The film is kind of split up into two halves, and the first half for me is perfection. It's exactly what I would expect Guillermo would make as a Frankenstein film. However, the second half really lost all steam for me at certain points. I could see what he was trying to do, but it just didn't connect with me. A big highlight is the fact that most of this film takes place in fucking Stonehaven, which is one of the best places in Scotland. Did not expect that in the slightest, but very cool. They filmed a lot of this in Scotland. I saw some of it being filmed like earlier last year, but yeah, I really enjoyed parts of this. I think the highlight for me is Oscar Isaac as Victor, but also Jacob Elordi as the creature is just insane. He completely loses himself in the role and he's unrecognizable. It looks great. I actually really love the score and it feels so typically Guillermo. However, I do have to say this is probably my least favourite film of his that I've seen. I expect big things for this one at the Oscars though, but I'm honestly not going to be rushing to rewatch it when it's on Netflix. The highlight of the film for me was someone's Nokia going off at one of the most moving scenes near the end of the film, and the entire cinema just bursting out with laughter. That was definitely a highlight. But yeah, I do kind of recommend you check this one out. It's probably going to be a huge Oscar player. Yeah, that's everything I saw. I also saw I Swear, but it's not really out anywhere other than the UK. All I can say is, if you're in the UK, check out. Pretty good movie. Regarding Oscar odds for these, I imagine Hamnet and Frankenstein are probably going to be the heavy hitters. It Was Just an Accident might get in there a little bit as well. Begonia 2 might get in. I don't know if the Best Picture chances are still there. And Wake Up Dead Man has no fucking shot. I recommend checking out all of these films though, even the ones that I wasn't too keen on. I think there is something in all of them that you can get and something that is a little bit for everyone. We're in award season now, baby, and this is where things kick off. So yeah, see you in the next one. Thank you very much.
I didn't bring lunch.